Good morning. My name is Sean Keys. I am the chair of the ACE Northwest. I'm also the managing director of Sutcliffe Civil and Structural Engineers and Surveyors, predominantly based out in the northwest of Liverpool and Manchester. I'd like to welcome you to this ACE webinar on social value and how to make an impact, and I'm sure you'll really enjoy it. We've been chatting before. We've got a fabulous group of panelists this morning, which I'm really pleased that we've got them to talk to us today. First is Nin Khoshaba from Hive Projects. Secondly, we've got Caroline Swailes from Be Ethical, and we've got Ramone Johnson from Avison Young, a great group of people. We'll all learn something from them today. We're planning to discuss how this will work in the communities and across the Northwest, and how to maximise social value, not necessarily just in the businesses, but in the region, and how we can influence people. We've got a discussion box on the right-hand side, and we are going to have some questions and answers that can be either go through the discussion box or be brought up at the end. I'm initially going to just put something up on general housekeeping. I think Chetna's about to put something up on competition law, so I'll just read this. Just please be aware that activities conducted by and within a trade body are subject to competition rules. Members must not discuss staff, must not allow members to discuss any competitive sensitive information in and around the ACE meetings or events, and the ACE takes these requirements seriously. Please visit the competition law policy to find out more. So thank you very much for reading that. We're going to start off with a little talk from the individual panelists on what their views on the subjects. And I was going to pass this initially over to Nin from Hive Projects. Thank you, Nin.
Thank you, Sean. Hello, everybody. So I was appointed to deliver social value in the planning stages of the North Manchester General Hospital redevelopment. So for anyone who is unfamiliar with that scheme, situated in Crompsall in North Manchester, where there is high levels of deprivation in terms of employment and health. So I suppose that there's probably over 150 languages, because it's a very sort of diverse community, and the hospital organisation to employ over 200 people. It has got a very strong BCSE sector, but it's probably quite underdeveloped compared to Central and South Manchester wards. So as part of my role, I've been working really closely with other organisations that are also helping to transform North Manchester. So Manchester City Council Work and Skills Team, FEC, who are the developer for Victoria North, which will be sort of Manchester City Centre all the way up to Coyhurst. So that'll be a big housing project. And also obviously other partners in the area, so the contractors and consultants. So we've been working really closely to devise a social value framework that covers 5 key themes. So education, employment and skills, health and well-being, community resilience, digital and carbon. So carbon will help the city with their ambition to be net zero by 2038. So we've been trying to target cohorts of people that we feel are particularly or been maybe particularly sort of impacted by COVID, but also facing like racial and health inequalities. So over 50s, long-term unemployed people, young people, those made redundant from as a result of the pandemic. And we found that all of those key themes all interlink. So we can also talk about that a little bit more later, maybe in the discussion, but we're using the national TOMs as well, just to record and measure our endeavours. And we also created a social value charter as well that we want all parties to sign up to, just to pledge their support for the sustainability agenda. So some of it includes like key elements such as like the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter as well. So we've been doing loads of collaboration over the last 18 months. And we're mindful as well that some of our contractors and consultants are at different stages with social value. We don't want anyone to be put off, and we also want to support those that maybe are a little inexperienced compared to others. So we've been delivering a series of workshops in partnership with Manchester City Council Work and Skills around digital and carbon and education. And I think there's so many like benefits of collaborating. For one, you can achieve more results together, but also you're actually working together, so you're not all targeting the same schools or the same communities all at once. You're actually you're not, I suppose, excluding or inadvertently excluding anybody that might require employer support. So we have regular meetings, we have a social values subgroup as well, and we've been collaborating on other activities, but I'm happy to sort of pick up a bit more about this later on, and I'll pass you over to Caroline now. Thank you.
Apologies. Thank you for that, Nin. So all of the stuff that you said absolutely echoes what we do as an organisation. We are Be Ethical Training, and our business is all about the accountability around social value in an organisation. And the reason that we use the ESG framework is because it's very, very basic, really, and it gives a real clarity around the different areas that are very, very important that need to be managed, so that a business can get a real handle on social value in their communities. Now, for me, I am very, very much about the social being right, because if the people in the business will drive the ESG framework. If you can get the social right from an employee perspective and a supply chain perspective, then you're going to really smash out the great things that can happen in the environmental agenda as well, because really, unless somebody's got the ownership and accountability, the environmental side of things just won't take shape, and they're just a tick box. It's a bit of a greenwash, and we don't want that for organisations. With ESG, it should become the golden thread that runs throughout the organisation. It should be business as usual. When going for contracts in any sort of bid or tender process, the question around social value shouldn't be a surprise. It should already be something within your organisation that's really clear, that's owned by somebody in the business, and that's being championed across the organisation in lots of different ways. You know, so for us, we're very much about saying to an organisation, this isn't a fundraising volunteer policy. When you look at the ESG framework, there's 3 columns. They're all worth 100%. Social, with regards to community, is only a small percentage. It's only around about 20%. You've got a whole other 80% there, which is all around the social value side of things. So, you know, there's an opportunity there to go into the locality where you're looking to place yourself as a business, and find out what's taking place from a social disparity point of view and social mobility point of view, and start addressing them. Don't just think it's about, oh, we'll just chuck some money at something, or we'll just create a volunteer program and we'll get loads of kids in to see the project and we'll go and see a school. There's so much more, and you mentioned it, Nin. It's, you know, data poverty now is huge. You know, there's going to be energy poverty throughout the country because of the increases in energy prices. There's so much more we can do as a business. And yeah, we might have to put some money behind it, but isn't that the right thing to do? Because if we're all winning more business, we're all creating more profit for our organisation. So use some of that profit and have real purpose, and make a difference. Now, how do we do that? We have to really get the programme going from inside the organisation before it'll start to work just outside the business. This is not the role of business development. This is the role of everybody in the organisation. So by giving your people opportunities and incentives to actually look at how they can make a personal difference, they will bring it back into the workplace, or they will take it home and share it as well. And what does that do for you? Well, that creates a much better representation of your business in your own community, which then helps to fly your flag when you do go for new contracts, because you become recognised as a business that really is taking social impact seriously when you are defining what contracts you're going for and why you're going for them. There'll be times when you know you shouldn't go for certain contracts because it doesn't sit right with what you're actually trying to achieve from a social value perspective. You know, there are decisions sometimes that need to be made that say, no, that doesn't align with what we're trying to achieve as an organisation. So this one isn't the right one for us. So the one thing that I do struggle with is the retrospective view of social value. So let's go and win a contract, let's get it over the line, and then let's figure out how we're going to do all the things we promised we would do. You know, as I said earlier, you really should have you should have this through your business. There should be a format in place that you follow every time you're going for a certain bid in a certain area. You go into that locality, you do your research, you see how what you're doing over here can fit over here, and you start to make those relationships and you start to get that team ready so that when you do win that contract, you're good to go, and you're not expecting the contractors to actually achieve it on your behalf. You're pushing for that all to happen from your point, not theirs. So I think I'll shut up now because that's enough from me. I can carry on forever. So I'll hand back over to somebody else. To Ramone, I think is going to go next.
Thanks for that, Caroline. And no, I think that was a great introduction, and again from Nin as well. I think a lot of what I can say in my introduction ties quite neatly into what my other two panelists have mentioned. And I think in terms of an introduction about myself, you know, my name is Ramon Johnson. I'm an associate level management consultant at Avison Young, but I'm also a director of a community interest company called the Decision Factory. So with those two hats that I wear, I think with the Avison Young hat, I think to put my job quite simple is that I help facilitate decision making. I think that's the very simplistic way of putting it, is what I do out there. But in terms of what I do with the Decision Factory, I know a lot of the work that we do is more on the community side of working with communities around the whole of the Northwest with regards to helping provide advancement for Black youth between the ages of 9 and 14. So what we do in that space is we run events to help educate these young people. We provide mentorship for the young Black people, but then we also do education and mentorship for businesses and organizations as well. We've worked primarily within the built environment to date, but we are not limited to the built environment. But simply, we've worked in the built environment because of my close connections with people within that sector and the strong passion I have for it, clearly. But in terms of the work that we do over at the Decision Factory, you know, we try and get in there at the coal-facing end of working with the communities very, very closely with the young people. But what we also learned through osmosis was working with the young people is figuring out how the businesses work with regards to social value. And then also the role involved in people of an older generation. So that's parents, teachers, enablers, because I know that we try to put a lot of focus on young people and what we should tell them and what decisions they should make. But ultimately, these young people need to be guided. And to better guide those young people is to better educate those people that can facilitate that guidance. So they're as teachers, parents, carers, all those good people. So over the past 4 or 5 years since the Decision Factory has been created, we've helped well over 100 young people through whether that's been helping them with apprenticeship applications, whether that's introducing them to the built environment, whether that's actually hosting workshops with them and taking them through quite some real life scenarios and working with their community companies within Manchester, Liverpool, Sheffield over the last couple of years, to name a few cities in there. It's been a very rewarding process, but also I think one of the things to remember about social value, and Caroline was leaning into this a little bit, is it isn't a tick box exercise. It's kind of a complete opposite of that. And if you treat it as a tick box exercise, not only do you get found out by your peers, but you also get found out by the people that you're supposed to be helping. You know, it quite quickly becomes prevalent that you're only in it for the wrong reason, so to speak, because the help that's needed, it's more than just siphoning money and putting money in one place. There's actual education that's needed. There's actual facilitation that's needed. There's actual access that's needed. So things that we've done in the past with the Decision Factory is providing access to organizations such as Arab, who've been a great help over the years. So they've opened their doors to having in-person events when they were permitted before the COVID outbreak, and then also having online events where we can host groups of 20 to 25 young people at a time to walk through their doors and actually see the office, experience it, breathe it in, get to understand what that all feels like and what it just means to be in a professional setting. Because one of the things that comes with social value is really understanding the position that the people are in that you're trying to help. And one of the things that we've uncovered is that a lot of these young people have never even really experienced a professional setting. And this goes, you know, I can speak quite candidly because I've worked quite closely with these people over the past 4 or 5 years, is that in general terms, in great percentage terms, we're talking about children whose parents and carers and close people don't necessarily have careers that align with walking into a professional office building or walking out on site and things like that. So to even just do that, you know, to show them is a great bit of learning from just being in the room. But then also it's the learning that's given to the company as well. Companies learn so much from having these young people on site, not just from seeing them and giving a blanket presentation, but also just being able to understand the way they talk, the way they move, the way they interact with things, and also just understanding. It's a little bit of shining the light under the bed for both the organisation and the children. It's been a great and rewarding process over these last 5 years, and it's something that I wouldn't change. And it's great because Avison Young have given me the platform to continue doing that, as well as continuing in my main job, which does get testy at times. It's a big job I've got over here, and it's great. It's very rewarding. But you can also start to see it in line with what Caroline and Nin have mentioned. You start to see it in procurement strategies and things when we're going out and winning work. You start to see that these social value implications, yes, they are in there in tenders and things like that, but it's not just a case of what you write on a bid document with a really nice InDesign overview that gets you the work. It's your track record, it's what you've actually done. It's do you stand by these words that you put on the paper, and Avison Young is a place that does that. So hence why I've chosen to be here. But I think that in terms of an intro for me will cover me nicely. I think it was just under the allocated time. I hope it didn't go over, Sean.
Well, I'm glad to say I didn't have a stopwatch, so I don't know, but it was perfect. So we've got a fabulous group of panelists in front of us. So if any questions, pop them in the chat box. But I've got a standard list of pre-prepared questions, and I'll work my way around. And I said, feel free to expand around the edges of this as you feel, panelists. So the first question is a fairly general question, and it's, what is social value? How does it tie into ESG? And what does it mean and should it mean to businesses? So possibly go around the order which the panelists spoke. Start with Nin.
Yeah, sure. So I think social value and ESG go hand in hand, really. I think ultimately they're both about creating positive impact. I suppose social value probably focuses more on the outcomes, where I think ESG is probably more like the governance and like the reporting side of things, and is more output led and how those can be viable. I don't know if my counterparts have anything else to add to that.
Caroline, do you want to jump in? I'm sure you've got an opinion.
We always try and say that social value, everything we do in ESG gives social value. It creates an impact. So whether that's from a relationship, person, community perspective, or a planet environmental perspective, and anything you do in governance, it's all feeding those anyway. So we see social value as everything we do in the ESG framework. When you put all of it's just, the ESG framework is just a really simple way to just like define things in different areas, because corporate social responsibility is a huge subject. It's just easy to put it in those three areas, because then you've got a little bit of guidance about how to do it, and then it helps people understand where they are involved in the whole process as well. So yeah, social value is everything I feel that is achieved under the ESG framework.
Ramon, do you have an expansion on those views?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with both the panelists on that. But one thing I would like to just lean on is that with social value being a piece of like a framework that doesn't really have just quantitative data only, the data is also quite qualitative. So it's also measuring the impact on a society or any group of people that you're striving to help. So you can't just look at it within some of the binary ways that we look in other elements of the way we work. You know, it's not ones and zeros in social value. Sometimes the data is quite qualitative, and it's also measuring outputs in terms of you know, that it's rating happiness, it's rating people's equality and things like that. So the way in which we measure things, I think the ECG framework does help tremendously with that. Yes.
Yeah, I had this conversation just recently with somebody, and I was saying to her, it's that net promoter score, isn't it, within an organisation? Would you work with this organisation on a scale of 1 to 10? Yeah, if you get over 7 or 8, then that business is in the right area. And it is a bit like that with social value. It's like, when we started this project with you, how did you feel? How do you feel today from a 1 to 10 perspective? But I wanted to mention before, when I was talking, which I forgot to add in, everything we do should be about legacy and longevity, and that's so important in all of this. Don't just jump in, helicopter in, do your bit and leave. Put the parameters and the goals and everything in place that say we're leaving a legacy behind, so people will recognize that organization came, they delivered, and they stayed. They didn't just helicopter out again, and that's what's really important here.
No, Ramon, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I'd just like to wholeheartedly agree. I think, and this is the way in which, the day job kind of links very well with the work that I do with not only the Decision Factory, but with social value in general. I believe that one of the ways in which we can greatly benefit is that if we start approaching these things the way in which we approach projects sometimes. So we kind of need to outline what the benefits are that we want to achieve, but then not just write them down on a piece of paper and forget about them. It's also checking back into making sure those benefits are actually realized. It's going back and actually checking with the people who we said we're going to help. Did you feel the benefit from what we said we're going to do? Have you felt any change? And actually just taking it forward, and actually just not only just, as Caroline mentioned, not just parachuting in, doing a job and leaving, but also making sure that the people who said we're going to help actually felt that they were helped.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll follow this, continue this on in terms of ESG, and what are the future expectations you think we're going to have on the industry and in the wider world? Where do you think we're going? What's the industry looking for from us? So I'll probably, I've mixed the order up again, and I'll probably start with Ramon and work the other way.
Well, I think one of the things that from a social value point of view, I think organizations, as well as big organizations, small organizations, regardless of what sector you're in, I think you need to understand the current cohort of employees and team members that are coming through. And I don't think that the days have gone where people solely focused on like money and status in terms of what they wanted for a career objective. They also look at things, well, what does this company stand for? What is the vision for this company? And these are the things that people align themselves more with. So I think social value is going to become a lot more prevalent going forward, because the next generation of workers and leaders that are coming through universities and even high schools, they want to know more. It's not just the fact that the bidders and the procurement process want to know more. It's actually the people who are coming to drive these businesses in the future. They want to know more. They want to know what the company stands for. They want to know what they help, what they help and who they help. Because if some companies have quite poor carbon initiatives, or they're quite poor with the work they do with the communities, some of the real strong candidates who would consider that company won't be considering them anymore. So it's things that these companies have to get their minds around for multiple reasons, and not just the fact that they have to do social value in terms of the procurement rights that they sign to. It's also for the fact of the future growth of their businesses.
So Nin, I'll push this in your direction, being a consultancy, SME consultancy, if my stats are right. Where do you think this is, where the future for ESG in sort of SME world is?
I think it's only going to continue to grow, to be honest. If you look at other sectors, even outside of the built environment, you're seeing a lot of people doing like social value consultancy, and I think everyone needs to play a part in it. It shouldn't just be down to, say, contractors, for example, or the bigger organizations. But I think with some maybe smaller businesses or people that may be a bit more inexperienced, I think all the different terminology that you hear probably does confuse people. So like your ESG, your social value and social impact, and social sustainability, CSR, etc. And I think chances are a lot of organizations probably are contributing towards social value. They might just not be fully aware of what they're doing at the moment. I think it's just something that's going to continue to grow, especially what with COVID and Brexit and the issues around like the supply chain and the workforce, and digital exclusion and well-being that have really sort of been heightened during COVID. I think it's just sort of showing that there is such a demand for it. So And rightly so as well, really.
Indeed. So, Karen, I know you've helped many SMEs, including some on this panel. So, where do you think the future's going for this?
Well, I mean, just look at the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They are there for a reason. You know, there's something there that we need to align with, but we need to see it as a local impact. We're never going to achieve it as a global response or impact on our own. So we just have to do our part. So if we look at what the UN SDGs say, then just try and interpret that to fit within your organisation, because they're the issues, they're what we've got to achieve. And as Ramone said, 77% of consumers are now requesting that businesses have ethical approaches to the way that they do business. That is huge. That's for Generation Z, I think we're up to now. Yep. So yeah, you know, it's there, it's never going to change. And Ramone said it as well, I choose to work here, not the other way around. He's interviewing the business to work for them, not we're interviewing the person to come and work for us. So the skills gap is going to get bigger and bigger if your business is not doing the things that should be done. And as you say, not from just a procurement perspective, but when I turn up into an organisation and say, you know, what are my benefits? What do you do in your community? How are you helping the environment? And you're going, we do a few bits and bobs. It's not enough. That person is not going to be interested in engaging with that organisation. So, you know, you've got a great opportunity here as a business to get some real clarity around all of this. People say to me all the time, oh, we don't do anything. And I'm like, give me 5 minutes. Right. Do you do? Do you do? Do you do? And within 5 minutes, we've got a framework in front of us. And then you can see their eyes starting to like light up and you're like, it's not hard to do this. Just got to give it some ownership. And that's, you know, if we could get in front of people to help them do that, you know, there's 90% of businesses are SMEs. I mean, how much change can we have if we all, you know, make some decisions around ESG now and start pushing ahead with it? It's, you know, it's such an opportunity now, and you might as well embrace it before it becomes legislation.
Yeah, no, that's Caroline. I completely agree with you. I had this question crop up with a young candidate who was actually, as you rightly said, interviewing me for a job, not the other way around. It was a very important topic. So just continuing the questions, how should we develop our social value commitments, and what should be the expected outcomes of the projects? So I'll probably start that, Caroline, if you don't mind, so you can be first.
Well, can you hand that over to someone in the built environment more than me?
All right. Well, okay. I'll pass it to Nin.
I think, well, to be fair, I think we've already kind of touched upon this before anyway, but I think it's so important for local people and as well, because obviously they are the voice of the community, and they've got the relationships and the trust with local people. I think it's just really important just to find out what the needs of the local community are. So rather than saying, oh, we're just going to do this, it's like, actually, do they need that? Are they aspiring to have those goals, for example? And I think just by understanding a bit more and really listening to people, it will actually help businesses make a real social impact. So I think that's probably a really good starting point. Almost use it as like a bit of a community wish list, like do your research first. I suppose it's just an extension of what Caroline sort of said earlier on, but I think that is key, to be honest.
No problem. Ramon, should we move to you?
I think, again, agree wholeheartedly with what Nin mentioned. And I think leaning on my my previous example before is approaching what we do in social value needs to mirror kind of how we approach things in the work environment. So if we're thinking about things from like a business case point of view, you would do some research of the area that you're going into before you just jump in and dive in and start saying that you're going to do a bunch of stuff. Well, you map out about a way in which that you're going to actually strategically approach this. You start inviting people from these places. So you link up with some community interest companies, charities, people from the community, youth centres. You know, you get involved with these people, you bring them in for a conversation. And instead of you just saying, we're going to do a bake sale, for example, and then when on the ground, they say, well, we just don't want cakes. Like, why are we doing cakes? So you're going to go and speak to them. And actually what they want is maybe just a conversation with a few of you guys. Maybe what they want is just to see the office. Maybe what they want is for you guys to go to a school. So it's a two-way process to understand what they want and if you guys can achieve that. So there's going to be a lot of more deeper work involved with communication between corporate and SMEs, and then also in the third sector with the community companies as well.
Well, thanks, Ramon. Caroline, do you want to add to that?
You know, it is understanding the community, because you might have an aging community in a space that you're actually working in, and that's a real difference between the young people and their needs. You know, older people still need the support that other people need. They just don't get recognised as, you know, that it is important, I suppose, in some ways. So, you know, as an example, I worked for a woodland burial park. So we ended up looking a bit like ambulance chasers, because we positioned ourselves where there were lots of, there was an old community, but actually by the time we invited them in, we took them around the space, we invited them, we created a coffee morning experience for them. They started to use us as a collaborative place of leisure. I know it sounds weird that they come to a burial park for leisure, but it was just a ceremonial hall that they could use for themselves. And then we started to bring young people in, and then we started to teach them about the architecture of the building and why it's so sustainable. And then we started to talk to them about how we manage woodlands and how they can be part of the green team that looks after the woodland. And you start to realise that actually there's so many levels of support that you can give communities once you start to unpick your organisation, that you can actually reach out to every part of the community. And just collaboration, you know, don't think you're in a competitor environment when it comes to social value. See it as a collaborative approach and work together to get the best out of the projects and get the best out of the spaces that you're in.
Caroline, I love that. This next question is more suited for you for being first. So understanding your business's current social position, social value position, and how does this translate into winning new contracts?
Right, so current position audit, love them. Sit down, get the right people in the room, and that doesn't just mean your managers. Get everybody at every level in a space and talk about what it means to them. Find out how they interpret the actual subject, because they might not be clear about it. So it's about educating them about what ESG is and what social value is. And you can do that really gently with a nice little sort of feedback mechanism at the end of it. And then it's about them bringing their ideas to the table, because they're the ones that are going to manage it. They're actually the ones that are going to fly the flag for it. So once you've got it really clear, it's about keeping everybody in the organisation up to date and informed about what is going to be achieved as an organisation in this space. And it's be really clear about the goals and look at ways that we're going to hit them, and talk about them at your you know, reviewing when you have reviews with your organisations. And if you don't hit them, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just be honest and be transparent about the way that you've tried, but you didn't hit the marker at that point, and what you're going to do in the future to make it better. And all of this information is all the qualitative data that we want to capture. It's all the storytelling, it's all the engagement, it's all of the impact that you're having, and just make sure that it's being shared with all of your stakeholders. Now, people are hiding data because they haven't hit the targets they set. Just be honest about it. We want the honesty. And if you can get some transparency and honesty with everybody involved, your programme of activity, your social value will be driven by by ownership in the business.
That's brilliant, Caroline. I love that. Ramon, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think again, following on from what Caroline said there, I think one of the things that organisations need to be prepared for is that ultimately they might not have the bright gold star answers that they're expecting to have when they start the process. I think one thing that everyone just needs to remember is that it is a process. Even starting that is a big jump in going in the right direction. I feel like a lot of companies hide their current positions on things because they're not too happy with the way their work in the communities is going at the minute. Maybe they have been approaching it as a tick box exercise, and they just don't want to say that, and they need the help to transform themselves from doing simple tick box exercise work into more quality, impactful work for the communities. But even just acknowledging the fact of where you're at now is a big step forward to getting to where you need to be. So I think some of these workshops that Caroline mentioned are like gold to some of these organisations, because it's not just about, as what Caroline says, it's not just about having the MD, CEO or whatever in the room for that. You're going to want a consultant in, you're going to want an administrator in there, you're going to want a senior level person, you're going to want a mid-level person in there to give a true representation of the organisation on every level.
Yeah.
No, that's right. Nin, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I suppose from a Hive perspective, there's like 50 of us now. We're a growing SME, so it's just about making sure that we are inclusive and making people, I suppose, educating people really on social value, like what it is, how they can get involved, and I think utilising their skill set and their interests as well, so that they actually do want to deliver it in partnership with you, and they understand why we're doing it. But just to go back to something that Caroline said, data, something we're doing with Manchester General Hospital is actually trying to do almost films, if you like, to capture some of the human interest stories, because I think numbers and figures don't always tell a story. So we're supporting any evidence, if you like, with case studies and with film journeys almost. So I think it's just a bit more, shows more of an impact, really.
No, didn't I? I was going to add something to this, that we recently were requested to form part of a team for a large project in Knowsley Council. And one of the factors, or the factor why they wanted to talk to us, was because they thought that our position in the local community was really, really strong. So it's a project that was led by this subject. So it can be 1% that gets you over the boundary, or it can actually be what gets you through the door. But the reality of it is we didn't do any of that work to win the contract. We did that work because it was just the right thing to do. It's our community, it's our town, it's our city, it's the kids in our area. We just want to help them. I'll keep on going through the questions. I've got some more great questions for you. So linked in with that last one is, who should be really driving the outcomes for the projects, and what's happening in the local communities? So probably I'll move that round again. I think Ramon, do you want to have a go at that one first? Thank you.
So who should really be driving it forward? I think ultimately, as mentioned previously in the call, the responsibility kind of falls on everyone to work through this process. But in terms of a focal point to deliver this, I think the businesses, and again, this is kind of why I chose working over here at Avison Young, is because when you have your corporate social responsibility quotas, everyone has them. So if there's a managing director, a principal, or an associate like myself who has that time allocation, then we can use some of the skills we have in our day jobs through the management consulting to kind of drive really through a lot of these benefits. So I think, again, as I've mentioned, we should be using the skills we have on our corporate side to kind of drive a lot of the needs on this side with the social value aspect. And I think that's where they can only add value going forward in this. I think it's less of it just being something that's pushed to one side and a particular group of people move forward. I think the CFO can work on this just as much as someone in admin or someone in the copy room can work on this. Everyone can work on it. But in terms of overall responsibility, I think that's what we start doing more of, is that when we have our corporate social responsibility days, maybe some of the more senior professionals do use that time to actually drive these projects forward with the likes of an SME working on the coal-facing side of this operation.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah. Nin, do you want to come in on that one?
No, I just totally agree with what Ramon just said. Really, I think everybody needs to play a part in it, but it does need to come from the top as well, almost, just to kind of re-emphasize the importance of it. But I think also sometimes it helps just to have an outsider come in and talk about social value and the importance of it as well. So with our first committee meeting, we invited someone from the council working just to really reinforce what we're doing in the local area and why it's important. So I think that can a different perspective can be quite useful sometimes.
Caroline,
I haven't got anything more to add. I do want to just mention how, we're all in business and we've all had pivotal moments in our career that have changed the way that we've looked at things.
Yeah.
And I think if we can create those pivotal moments for people in our communities and those that are going to be interacting with us, then that's what we should aim for, because that pivotal moment could be the difference between that young person going down the wrong path or choosing a career in an area that is something that we can offer them. So think about the pivotal moments that you've had and who engaged you and who was your mentor, and use that as knowledge to shape those pivotal moments for people in your communities going forward, because that impact will be ginormous. I know I've had 3 through my lifetime in my career, and they've certainly shaped the way that I look at things. And my manager in the business I was in that gave me the skill set to do what I do now, he lived and breathed this, and he ensured that we all engaged in a way that we were clear. It was clear that we could do whatever we wanted from a volunteer perspective. We could do whatever we wanted, and we could donate to whichever charities we wanted. We could call things out when they weren't being done. We could get rid of suppliers if they weren't aligned with us. It was just really clear that we had that we had that independently if we wanted it. So yeah, think about the pivotal moments that we can create for our communities, and I think as an organisation, and all those 90% of businesses which are SMEs can have those opportunities to help young people and older people.
Okay, well, I've got a couple of questions that I've just put on the chat box, so I'll throw these out if somebody wants to pick these up. How do you get started in a business if you currently have nothing effectively, and basically where would that person start? So I don't know who wants to take that one. Caroline, shall I put that to you? I think that's you.
Sorry, say it again. I was trying to turn my phone off because it keeps.
All right, sorry. A business that doesn't do anything in this sector, how do they get started?
Right. Every business does something. Let's just make that clear. Every business does something. You're not in business today unless you're doing something that isn't just your ops. So you are employing people and you have a process for that. You're recruiting people, you have a process for that. You are probably letting your staff have a little bit of time to go and do things that matter to them. So you're already doing something. But really, it's about the current position audit. Take some time out of your organisation to look at how you can see the activities in your business that can sit under the ESG framework, and then commit to training the people in the business to actually understand what it means from their perspective so that they can be part of the process of getting a programme in place. And then it's the accountability. It has to be owned internally. As a consultant, we can go in, we can do all the interviewing, we can do all of the training, and then we can deliver a strategy and you can put it in your drawer and ignore it. Or you can then give somebody the opportunity in your organisation, or a number of people in your organisation, the chance to actually manage it. But it doesn't have to be a full-time role, but it does have to be part of their job description, because this isn't a nice to have, this is a must have. And if it's in their job description, then they should be like appraised on it as well. And then this is when it becomes part of the culture and it becomes business as usual.
No, dear. I'm just conscious of time. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but I've got one little question now I'm going to just throw to Ramon, because I think you'll be able to give us a good answer. When developing social value commitments, how do you ensure these meet the needs of the local community?
Again, a great question, but I think it comes from inviting the community in that session. I don't think companies can have these sessions in isolation and make decisions for groups of people without their involvement. So I think it's one of the first things that you should probably do is look for organizations or community groups that work in the space that you're trying to target. You know, maybe reach out to them, invite a figurehead or two figureheads from that organization to be part of a workshop at your place of work, and then have that conversation, you know, lay out what you're planning on doing, and be open for the fact that what you're thinking might not be right. So I think I know it's very personal if a lot of people have put a lot of work behind things, but ultimately, if it's not what the community needs, then you need to be open to the fact that you need to mold and change and be coachable. Because ultimately, I don't think a lot of us are in the best position to start saying what a whole different group of people need and want from a scenario. We have to make them part of that process.
No problem. I'm just conscious of time, so we did say we'd finish at 45, and I know people on the call are really busy. So I'd just like to say many thanks for everybody who's been listening. As I said, I've truly enjoyed this. I've learned things. We've been really honoured. We've got a really diverse panel on here who've been exceptional. Give us a real quality insight into where the future is resting. So I'd like to thank obviously Nin, Caroline and Ramon for me and on behalf of everybody listening. So thank you very much. And just a final reminder that this webinar that will be on a link later. So if anybody wants to listen to it again, then please follow it through, or equally pass it around to the staff. Because the most important thing I think we can do on this subject is educate people, is to educate. So I'd like to say thank you very much for attending. I look forward to seeing you all again and meeting you in person. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.